So what we found in here is there's a nut on the end of that shaft. Well, that nut backed out because the people who did the repair on this didn't put the little cotter pin in. It backed right out, it fell off, and then started wobbling around and pretty much made a mess of things. We have a shop here which you got to be careful with. I made the mistake of spending money twice on them, and this is what we ended up with. Now I think I can fix it though, but Doug has one off of his hay vine. If we can get that shaft out of there, let's make sure it doesn't have a nut on the other end.
Shouldn't, mine didn't.
Well, it's back together again, and I turned it by hand, and it seems like the rollers are timed properly. We didn't change the timing on them. We're very careful when we put the chains back on the sprockets that we didn't change the position of one roller relative to the next, because those scrolls got to intertwine. You know, picked this thing up for a project for my other channel, and these are the ones that nobody wants, right? And what it is, it's an electric shift lower unit. And what I was looking for is that set of controls, because I have another electric shift motor like this, except for it's a full 3-cylinder instead of a 2-cylinder twin. And I also have another lower unit, which I think I can blend this 50 horsepower top end to. So it killed 2 birds, 1 stone. I spent like 150 bucks on it. And one was getting a good set of controls and wiring to blend with my Thunderbird. And the other is to get a power head I can blend with the same generation lower unit, you know, and have a running 50. So 2 birds. Still carrying around that 25. I haven't decided what to do with that yet. It's an older generation. You can tell by the 2-piece lower unit right there. So that's probably prior to 1970. That's got to be back in the 1960s era. The reason I like that motor is because it's got the same basic horsepower as the one I just been running. I'll show that later in the video, but it weighs less. So it may end up being on that little boat. Being a saw channel, you know, I got to get back to those roots. And I got some genuine Husqvarna parts that got rained on. We got rained on real hard here. This is that 70 horse, actually it's a 55 horse 3-cylinder that I was looking for controls for. It has that same kind of bulbous lower unit that has the solenoid operated shifter on the inside. And I want to do a video on the other channel on how to make them run, how to make them work, because 9 times out of 10 when you get a motor of this generation, most of the time the reason why they stopped was that shifting mechanism on the inside. And really what happens is the solenoid just gets gummed up, and usually what you have to do is pull it apart and clean it and put it back together. So I'm going to get a couple of seal kits so we can pull that lower unit apart, pull it out the front, and then clean up that solenoid and see if we can't make this one shift, and then along with those controls we just got, make this one run. It'd be a nice motor. And the saws that are on the bench, I have to do something with that 562 that swallowed part of the spark plug. It's a mess on the inside. So I'm just going to see if I can salvage it with a piston. Put it back into service. And this saw right here is going to get that handle and a muffler mod at a minimum, and possibly a piston. So that blue saw is going to get some work done today or tomorrow. Right alongside this favorite of mine, an old John's Thread Model 80. And I want to get that running and going. Along with my L77, I want to put these into service for the fall time, going back to my vintage saw roots. But this saw right here, I ran it this weekend, you know, upstate New York, and it ran well. It ran very well. I did a a big old pine tree that was probably 28 to 30 inches at the base and bucked it up and noodled all those stumps. I didn't get any video of it, just didn't have time and didn't have a camera. But that saw performed beautifully. I think the biggest problem I had on that whole job is trying to manage the sap. So this saw right here is going to get a new handle, I think. Although there's nothing wrong with that handle. It did not bend. I yanked on it. That handle is fine. At first I thought it was a little bit on the wimpy side, but it's proven its worth already. And it's actually not a bad handle at all. But I like the muffler mod it. You know, I'll muffler mod it where it's my style, where if I use it for milling or doing big wood like I did this weekend, the exhaust gases go off to the side, not right into the work. You know what I'm saying? And Farmer Tech sent me this piston after I complained incessantly about this one. It had all that blow by because it never really seated and it was dimensionally incorrect. So I think what I want to do real quick before I get into the what's happened this weekend video, which had nothing to do with saws, it had everything to do with boats and trains, is let me just measure this and see if they actually did something different here. All right, new piston at 2.19 on the crown. I wish this camera would focus. It's not focusing. Old piston, essentially the same statistical thing, 2.91. But here's the big one right here. This one's only 2.93 across the skirt. The stock piston made by Maul was actually a full 10 thousandths difference between the crown to the skirt. So let's see if this one matches what the Maul had. And yes, it is. So the new piston from Farmer Tech is actually dimensionally correct. It's actually a full almost 8 thousandths larger in diameter than the one that came out of the saw. So that's an improvement. Well, here's my dilemma. This is actually a nice looking piece. And I had said that before. This one was too if it hadn't been dimensionally incorrect. The one I put in there from Little Red Barn basically doesn't look very good at all, you know. So what I'm tempted to do, and I'll kind of ponder on it a little bit, is to pull that saw apart. I think this is a better piston than what I put in there right now with the Little Red Barn. Maybe pull the base gasket and get the compression. And this one here is definitely an improvement dimensionally than what came out of there. So what they had told me was there were some of these that got through. All right. And that from now on, all the 395s have these kind of teething issues. Once they recognize they have an issue, that they made some changes in their supply chain and how they do things and QA or whatever. But you know, it's I said in my last video, I'm not even sure it matters, because I was going to pull that thing anyway and go over time with an aftermarket pop-up. So it's important to them because of, you know, company pride and customer, you know, satisfaction with their saws. They don't want to deal with warranty issues, so they don't have to. So they made a point of rapidly solving that supply chain issue, right? But from my perspective as a hobbyist, I don't know if I was going to use a stock piston. I was going to go with another brand pop-up, you know what I'm saying? Try to get a little more snap out of that saw. But by doing that, I'm not really testing the product. Doing this, I've both tested the product, but also shown the weakness and the solution, but also addressed the fact that they are, in fact, addressing that. 8 thousandths more, you know? Can't beat that. Do I put this one in, or do I just run the Little Red Barn one until it fails or I get tired of it? Anyway, on to the video, which is really just sort of a recap of this weekend away from saws. Took a vacation. Restarted this project. Did a bunch of fiberglass and, you know, got the floor in. And this little boat's going to scoot. The more I learn about these right here, I got to do a patch right there and clean that mess up. But this little boat here with that kind of horsepower in it is going to move right along. I've got to get myself a decent prop for that motor. But I'm going to hope to put a 21 pitch prop on that one. So I'm editing this video and realized that there's a segment in there where somebody mentioned I ran the boat into the rocks. And I did. And we had to go to Altoona to find a lower unit that was acceptable. So we did that. So I'll stick this little segment in there. And then I'll stick a little segment from the Altoona trip in there too.
this one floats. That's the problem, I had to do it right-handed. I'm going to get him those little mitten clips to hold on.
Lots of view hats, definitely.
Alright, Smarty Pants. His karma for trying to get around that guy.
So I hit the rocks, right? And something bent inside the lower unit where there was a terrible vibration, whether it was in gear or out of gear. Didn't do a whole lot to the prop, partly because I was idling, so it was more of a push than an impact. So went down to Pennsylvania, ran Altoona, bought a lower unit that was supposed to be functioning from a fella down there who has a outboard business on the side, pressure tested and gears work. My son and I just finished putting it on. We're going to take this boat, see if it fires up, see if it vibrates, and see if we have gears. Test ride. far as you can see that way. And as far as you can see that way. And you figure how long that thing's got to be. There's a road crossing up there which is completely blocked. Wow. Here's the other one. if you can see in there, but that piston damn near looks like brand new. It is a pain in the neck, isn't it? Yeah. So I don't have my video camera, so I'm going to have to improvise by putting it in the vise, I think. My phone. And mission right now is try to... The mission right now is to try to get the top end off this little 562 before I roll into the other projects of the day, like this little piston from Farmer Tech in the 395, and see how much damage has been created inside that cylinder from that spark plug with a tip dropped off on the inside. Now, if you remember correctly, I fired it up. Probably shouldn't have, but I did, and it rattled pretty good. I'm cautiously optimistic that I can salvage that top end, but I'm realistic enough to know that chances are it's probably pretty beat. So anyway, we get going on it and see if we can turn chicken manure into chicken soup again. Get the common theme. In addition to that, I don't have my normal tools. My tools are actually in my Hilltop saw shop, not here. Kind of in transition. So I'm going to have to come up with tools in order to take this apart. And, that can be a trick all by itself. T27 steel copy. I have to go get an impact driver. See if I can find one that'll work. Well, I ran this guy here because everything's T27. Disconnected throttle, pushed the fuel line off. Had to unhook that line from this clamp right there. And zip those cylinder screws out. They're all T27s as well. And then just pull the cylinder right at the top. And what did I find? I found a rather beat to crap piston. That's what I found. So anyway, the piston is obviously beat to hell, right? And there's some, it got beat down there too, which is kind of interesting. I've never seen it down there before, but you know, didn't score the piston or anything. And if you look at the cylinder, it dinged up the squish band. So it's actually run this way for quite some time before it came to a stop. But it didn't seem to score the walls. So I don't know, man. So we had to quit running. We had to quit working on the little 25 and back to this boat. Got the floor in. We got to glass the floor, and now we're mounting this big old 6-inch. It's going in. Big old Merc. Yep. Just showed up. There's one.